Okay, episode 60 of Red versus Blue. My name is Mike Stark.
And I'm Keith Curry.
And we are back to sum up things before both of us go on another vacation. You know, that's what the retired life is about. I'm leaving the country. Whether they'll let me back in afterwards is a question. You're going to Alaska.
I am. I'm worried about getting into Canada because they have they don't take the whole 51st state thing with any humor.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we'll report back when we both get back. All right, let's take the topics in this order. First of all, the LA ICE situation. You're calling it a riot. I don't know that it qualifies, but we can spar on that. But your take on it?
Well, apparently Stephen Miller screamed and berated at Kristi Noem and the people from Homeland Security because we weren't arresting enough immigrants. He said, we've got to expand this beyond criminals. So get out there to Home Depot and 7-Elevens and arrest people. And lo and behold, ICE showed up at a Paramount Home Depot. And Home Depots are known for having day laborers who stand outside and they get picked up by contractors who need people to, work on roofing projects or painting or what have you.
Right.
And they started making arrests. That led to a little bit of a street demonstration. They took the people to a detention center in downtown Los Angeles, and that became the focal point for a riot. And without the request of the governor, without the request of the mayor, Trump directed 2,000, later 4,000 National Guard troops to be deployed to assist in ICE under somewhat questionable authority. All they had jurisdiction to do was to protect the building and to protect the ICE agents while they were doing their business. If the demonstrators had been smart, they would have moved the demonstration away from a federal building and National Guard would have been nowhere near them. And for the first day, which was, I think, a Sunday, America was aghast that he would do this. It was a colossal waste of money. It will ultimately cost $134 million for this 60-day deployment. But it was clearly, I think, a wag the dog moment, trying to take public attention off of the Elon Musk blow up, off of the taco trade, off of the bogged down nature of the big, beautiful bill and other issues that Trump was facing. And he was losing. The public was, I think, opposed to the deployment right up until Sunday night when they started blocking the freeway and burning the Waymos, and one police car got burned. And all of a sudden we had a riot. The strategy worked for Trump. And public sentiment is against riots. The one thing we learned in the whole Black Lives Matter thing is, don't block a freeway at rush hour and, don't set stuff on fire and don't graffiti the walls. And that moved public sentiment in Trump's favor. And he got what he wanted. He got an excuse to juxtapose himself against the response of the governor and the mayor in this area, even though it was a relatively small, contained demonstration. And even though the troops themselves had nothing to do with containing the crowd. We were treated to a vision of 3 National Guardsmen who now are actually federal Army troops. They're no longer National Guard because they've been federalized. They're Army troops standing in a semicircle with assault rifles drawn, machine guns, aimed outwardly at any potential crowd, protecting 2 ICE officers, both of which were wearing flak jackets and carrying sidearms, arresting some poor guy who got up one day and thought he was going to go out and paint a house today. That became symbol of what they're doing. But nonetheless, I think Trump, at least in the short run, is going to win on this. We'll see what happens in the long run. But while we're talking about this, we're not talking about Musk. We're not talking about tacos. We're not talking about crypto. So, wag the dog continues to be a winning strategy.
Yeah, and the presence of ICE is what triggered all of it. And then, as you said, Stephen Miller asked them to ramp it up, so they ramped it up, and that just caused things to be worse. It put a heck of a strain on local law enforcement, who had to come in and basically clean up this chaos that the ICE people had started with their very overt approach to this immigration situation. Had they come in, quietly done what they'd said they were going to do, there probably wouldn't have been anything. But so it's one thing after another, and the people that suffered, actually everybody suffers. The local law enforcement were taken off their regular duties to do other things to prevent violence because of the ICE thing. So I feel sorry for them. And then they automatically get tied in with ICE as the bad guys when they're really not. They're trying to just keep peace. And then, in a way, I feel sorry for the National Guard people too, because they were brought in. They do what they're told. They're ordered to do what they do, and so you feel sorry for them. And I'm sure some of them are questioning why they're there. And then you didn't mention the other aspect that he called up the Marines.
Yeah, 400 Marines, I guess, are now in Seal Beach, learning how to do takedowns and physical contact with civilians without shooting them with an M16, which is what Marines are trained to do.
Right.
It's not clear where or if they will be deployed, but they have been brought up from 29 Palms and are here. This was all done, by the way, without adequate thought of housing, food, and water for the troops. They were sleeping on floors in warehouses. It's not clear how provisions were made. Apparently, the Marines in Seal Beach have tents to sleep in during the kind of foggy nights, but very poor planning and logistics. 724 Los Angeles police officers were pulled out of the neighborhoods to be downtown, along with hundreds of sheriff's deputies and police from other jurisdictions to facilitate this involvement. What's unfortunate is that these demonstrators, whether it's the Philadelphia Eagles winning the Super Bowl or whether it's a black man being shot improperly by the police or whether it's immigration, some people just believe the way to celebrate is to steal a pair of sneakers and loot a phone and set something on fire. And until that stops, the law and order sentiment is alive and well. And that's what we're seeing here. Martin Luther King understood this. And that's why he was very careful with all of his demonstrations to be peaceful. And that lesson needs to be relearned by this generation.
Absolutely. Without a doubt. There's always seems to be the bad actors that spoil everything. And for the most part, there was a lot of peaceful demonstrations. I know here in Long Beach, we had a peaceful demonstration in downtown area on Ocean Boulevard. They shut down a little of the traffic as they were moving down the street. But at the end of the day, the Long Beach police praised the demonstrators as to how peaceful they were. And I thought that was an indication of how things should go in these things, you know?
Exactly right.
Yeah. So we'll have to see what happens. There are major demonstrations this weekend in all over the country. Some feel that this situation in LA is a preemptive strike by Trump to maybe have to declare martial law if things get out of hand in these other protests, which they very well could be. There's conspiracy theories that the Proud Boys are going to be involved to stir things up. So we'll know more after this weekend. And after this weekend, Keith and I are leaving the country for our vacation. But we'll report back to you when we get back. But that's kind of where we stand, right?
That's right. There will be the demonstrations throughout the country. It's scheduled to have thunderstorms and rain on Trump's parade in Washington. There will be counter demonstrations there as well. And it will be a spectacle for America. And again, Martin Luther King knew that the way to make these demonstrations successful is to keep them peaceful. And that should be the watchword this weekend.
I hadn't heard the weather report for Washington. That's ironic, isn't it? Well, one of the things that these situations on the street have caused is people distracted from the Elon Trump battle or skirmish, or I don't know how you characterize it.
I think Karl Rove put it best. He says it was like two of those Mattel Rock'em Sock'em robots, battling it out on the playground because it was about that childish. But, Musk said that Trump was in the Epstein files. And then obviously everybody has a file of photographs of Epstein and Trump that made it to the news. He also called the big, beautiful bill, which is the cornerstone of the Trump legislative program, a monstrosity, and suggested that Trump should be impeached. Trump then suggested ending all of Musk's federal contracts, of which they exceed $8 billion. Musk's net worth fell by billions of dollars because his stock tanked, as his investors said. Getting in a pissing match with the president of the United States is probably not the wisest thing to do if you're a business leader. And then we had the final release of the Doge reports, which went from an estimated $3 trillion of savings to $2 trillion of savings to $165 billion of savings to half that, if you look at the analysts, to a bill that will be an actual rescission bill that encompasses the Doge savings of $9 billion, mostly foreign aid and PBS. And that bill, frankly, may or may not pass. thousands of federal workers who were displaced and fired and dislocated have been rehired or in the process of being rehired. The Doge left behinds are all wondering whether they have a job now that there's no real sponsor for them anymore,
right,
and are concerned about their situation. Musk was forced to back down after a call with Susie Wiles and J.D. Vance that told him that he was about to get smoked, I guess. He called Trump and then issued a thing that said he went over the line with the things he said and he regrets them and withdrew them. Trump did not really respond to that. I think we can sum it all up in Trump's observation about the Doge cuts when he's sitting with his senior staff and looks at them and says, was it all bullshit? And I think a lot of people in America are thinking that, in fact, might be the best analysis of the whole Elon Musk effort over these past 100 and some days.
Keeping in mind that it is Trump that brought this
right.
on.
Right, created the chaos.
Much like everything else, you know.
Well, we fired 1,000 CIA agents. We fired air traffic controllers. We fired the people who control nuclear waste. Now they're trying to find them and bring them all back. We fired national park rangers. It's just created chaos. It hasn't really saved a lot of money. In fact, one person has speculated that the whole hiring and bringing people back and substitutions and overtime, et cetera, has probably cost the government money.
Makes sense, actually. That would apply to any business that did those sort of things, I would think.
Absolutely.
All right. And finally, let's talk about this big, beautiful bill that isn't quite as beautiful as it was when it started.
You know, we've learned some lessons about political messaging, and probably the worst political messaging of the last 100 years was people saying, let's defund the police. The Republicans apparently have not learned that lesson because they have a bill that will actually prevent a massive tax increase on all Americans. It should be a slam dunk popular bill. But yet, and the Democrats have been completely sidelined on this, the Republicans themselves have sabotaged the bill. Musk called it a monstrosity. Republicans in the House are saying it doesn't cut enough. It can't do anything. It's a bad bill. You've got senators like Rand Paul and Josh Hawley saying it cuts too much in terms of Medicaid because, again, red states are the biggest users of Medicaid services. West Virginia, half the people in the state are on Medicaid, 40% in Missouri, huge percentages in a place like Mississippi. So they've got a big problem. The Senate doesn't want to do the state and local income tax cuts because Republicans don't represent states with high taxes, so they don't have a constituency in the Senate. They're going to roll that back, which is going to potentially cause the bill to lose votes in New York and California among Republicans. So it's a big mess. They're beginning to mark it up this week in the Senate. It's not clear what's going to come out of it. I think the Senate actually has clear-headed leadership to bring the bill forward. Whether it is able to get through the Senate and then to the House and then pass, I think something's going to pass. But it's right now, it's a complete mess. But the messaging, Republicans are getting no credit for, preventing what would have been one of the largest tax increases in American history because they've got they decided to make it one bill with all this stuff in it. And it's got all of these extra things hung onto it that are creating flack and causing damage within the Republicans. The Democrats are sitting back laughing. So it's all a self-inflicted wound.
Right. And that's a tradition in Congress is you get a good bill going and then you just start adding a bunch of stuff to it. But it seems like they threw everything at this bill, everything that they wanted into one bill. And that sounds like what you're saying is part of the downfall of this slam dunk bill.
Well, it very much could be. There is a provision, for example, that prevents judges from finding in contempt and enforcing contempt orders against members of the administration, which is likely to happen given all of the way the Justice Department's abused its power and authority. There's other things in there exempting AI from regulation that Marjorie Taylor Greene has an objection to. I mean, there's a lot of little turds buried in the 1,000 pages of the bill that are going to be problems for somebody.
All right. Before we go, I want you to plug, you're going to be on TV here at the end of this weekend, right?
Right. I'm going to be on KDLS this week talking about local government finance and whether your city is going to go bankrupt. I'm there with Rick Reef and John Morlock. So come and check us out. 5 o'clock on Monday. It's channel 38 if you get Cox in Orange County.
Beautiful. I saw some clips from it. You look good.
Well, I'm upright.
Yeah, exactly. It's a local program, right?
Right, local PBS program, OC World.
If you're somewhere else in the country, you're probably not going to get this be enlightened by Keith. But
find it on YouTube.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, they're going to put it up there after it's done. Right?
Yeah.
All right. Very good. We're going to take off for a while. Stay with us. We're getting more and more comments on our pages. Appreciate that. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to whatever platform you do, and we will return very soon with another edition of Red versus Blue.
Thanks, everybody. Stay safe.